But once you start him up, and away it goes. And it's amazing that, mind you, the wheel had to be balanced first of all, but it's amazing how just a short distance off bottom dead centre is enough to put the wheel out of balance and get it swinging round. And of course, the more power you put in, the faster the engine goes, but he still doesn't get away from that bottom dead centre. It still stays there. And that really is kind of basically all there is to the model. But what has surprised me is that that's the good old-fashioned steam engine, 060 tank, which you never see these days. All you ever see on British Rail these days is electric or diesel or something. Yet it's amazing how many children, kind of this size, who have never seen a steam engine, they come up and they identify it as a railway locomotive. The only thing I can think of, and somebody did suggest it, that it's very similar to Thomas the Tank Engine. And that might be the thing which triggers their minds. Because, you know, very few of them have seen steam engines at all. But anyway, there it is. Just as a final thing, that this year at Stoneleigh, the chap with his wheel had got it there again this year, so I nipped over and had a look. And I found out that it wasn't one wheel, he got two wheels side by side with just bits across and the track laid on there, which of course made it nice and easy. But there you are, that is it. My fun model of the year.
Nobody gave you the hint or called you the fat controller or anything?
No, I've done very well so far, Bob.
What have hinted more to Thomas the Tank? Right, Mr. Sinar.
I decided that I would try and build a loom. Whether the loom will ever be finished, don't ask me. I'm enjoying the travel, I'm enjoying making modules for it, and if ever they go together and I weave that much cloth, I shall be very happy personally. In order to set myself off on my travels, I built this loom to the words and music, which was published years ago in 1974, 1975, from Morris Morris. It was originally the Spanish loom, and I built this to find out how a loom worked. It does work. It's there, it's got a pattern device, it's got a shuttle, and it's got all the faults that a shuttle loom always has, i.e. the shuttle doesn't go all the time. Now I think we've all met Colin Reid. He's not here today, and he's always brought a loom along which operates on a rapier principle, and that idea has fascinated me ever since I saw Colin's and then started looking it up in the technical books in the Liverpool Library. And I found that a rapier had potential for being much more reliable than a shuttle. Also, if you wanted to change the colour of the weft running across the warp the loom, then there was a facility there for changing that as well. Now, okay, this is a quarter of 1/2 of a rapier loom, driven by steam methods, and there we have the rapier moving to and fro, and if we can we just have somebody, a volunteer, no, we want you to have a volunteer, we'll put a piece of wool across there as if it was presented. That'll do, it'll hold. And we carry on winding the handle. You will see that that is gripped. It's gripped now. You see it's gripped quite tight. And then, I need 3 hands here, we'll pull it back and it will let go when it's pulled it through. Right? And the same thing happens again. So, that is one part of the mechanism. That is drawing the weft through. The weft also has to go in pieces. So we've built this horrible looking bird's beak gubbins, which frankly I picked up the other day and I've been working on it a few months back and I forgot how I did it. In it is a razor blade. In it also is a clamp. Now if you can just hold that piece of wool straight like so, just hold it straight like that and I'll let go in a moment. We are presenting that to, where are we? Just drop it into there, right? Okay. Now let go that side, pull that side gently and you can see it's clamped. Okay? Now if we do the other thing, it cuts off as well. So it is not only clamped on one side but it cuts it off as well. Now this will be rebuilt 20-30 more times until I get it right. There's far too many pieces involved in it. Now, the other piece which I took to Skegness with me is pure Colin Reid. I think he got it from somewhere else. It's also in all the loom books, and this is a thing called a dobby. Now, if I waggle that, I'm going to ask you to be a volunteer as well in a moment, waggle this up and down. So one full cycle is that per insertion of the rapier. Now, if you press one of these levers down, press a couple of these levers down, doesn't matter. That's right. Now, if I do that, hold up, just hold it there, and you can see the levers move. Now, press any other selection of them, and you can see they're moving in all sorts of weird ways. Now, it's an extremely simple mechanism, but the more you look at it, the more likely you are to have a nightmare. Because trying to figure out a pattern selection device which depresses these levers, and these are either operating the heddle frames up and down in the loom or presenting weft, depending on which part of the loom you design this gubbins into, then you can generate a pattern or patterned cloth. So the theory goes. That's it, folks. Thank you.
Well done, Ken.
With Stoneleigh, Dad, it's like a museum with all the models. In fact, with due respect, looking around the room today, you know, how many of the models are based on prototypes? They couldn't. He said, this was back in Christmas, he said, by the summer the new Star Wars film will be out. Star Wars will be the one. So I built this model. And it was great fun because when I produced it at Stoneleigh on the Thursday evening, with due respect to Meccano fraternity, nobody knew what it was. And yet, during the show, suddenly 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds were remembering their Star Wars game, you know, the old plastic figures and everything. So it became a great interest to the modern generation. And I show it to you simply to say that, you know, if we're thinking about the future of Meccano, one of the things to bear in mind is what my 20-year-old told me, which is people don't want to look at the museum exhibit. And my other models, you know, the Scamel and the ship, were museum exhibits. They want to look at things that they can associate with. The trouble is, of course, that this isn't the latest Star Wars film. The latest Star Wars film is computer generated, so it's all curved. So only Bob Brook could make it out of Meccano. But this one was built at the time when they actually had to make things, 17 years ago when this Star Wars film came out, and they actually had to mock up the models to make them for the film. So presumably they were made out of plywood and wood, and therefore they were flat-sided and ideal for making out of Meccano. And the drawings, in case any of you are interested, I got from the internet, because there are people who are daft enough to draw the thing, and it's up in scale drawings which I managed to download. So it's the X-wing starfighter, and somebody complained to me at the show that the markings were wrong for Luke Skywalker's, and I said it isn't Luke Skywalker's, there are more than one, you know. I looked a bit amazed. But the thing that made my day was a chap came along, an England football fan, a typical England football fan, you know. Football shirt, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, pint of beer in his hand, swaying from side to side, and he stood in front of this, and I moved it just as I did with you, and his eyes lit up. I used to have one of those. Fantastic! I would never have thought that he'd have been a fan of Meccano at all. That's all. Thank you.
George's, this car chassis goes back to just the turn of the century. The story behind it was in 1898, more than 100 years ago, there was a bright young French engineer called Brillet who came up with this idea of an improved internal combustion engine having two pistons in each cylinder joined to a common crank. So for each explosion you got a push and a pull on the crank, giving a smoother movement. Right? It said he got the idea from a steam engine. I've not been able to trace which one or when. It said he based it on that. he found a financial backer called Gabron, and they formed the company Gabron Brille to make cars using this particular type of engine that ran very smoothly. So the first cars were a typical primitive Edwardian type of cars with two-cylinder engines. But to get anywhere in those days, you had to have a racing car to get the names in the headlines, as you do today, I suppose, with Mercedes and all the rest of them. So they produced this racing car, 13.6 litres, 4-cylinder, 8 pistons. It turned out just over 100 horsepower. They started racing it, and it wasn't all that successful as a racing car, but it was very lightly built with a tubular plate frame, go very fast in a straight line. So they set a new land speed record, I think, 4 times altogether. They got to 93 and then 94, 97 miles an hour. Then in 1903 they got it just above 100 miles an hour. So it's the first car to go past 100 miles an hour. It must have been pretty exciting with wooden wheels and chain drive. Maximum engine revs, I think, were about 700 RPM at that time. Nowadays racing cars are 17,000, aren't they? Something like that. There's a demonstration engine there and a chassis that I had both of them at Skegness. I've just made a turntable because the motor show's coming up, and I thought it's time to have a turntable and get some dolly birds on there now. Okay.
Excellent, David. Very well presented. David's also made a roughly 6-foot diameter rotating wheel, or what's it?
Yeah, I made a big Ferris wheel. It's a Ferris wheel that's, popular at the moment. They're having trouble with them. So I think not a lot of people realise that, again, going back 100 years, there was the big original Ferris wheel in the USA in the early 1890s, and then there were 2 versions in this country, one at Earl's Court and one at Blackpool. So I made a model of the Blackpool one that had 30 cars, 30 people in each car, so nearly 1,000 people on the wheel. It was a bit of a white elephant. It was just around the turn of the century. But I made a model of it that takes in half, but it takes a long time to put together. So I didn't bring it today. It took more than an hour to put it up and more than an hour to take it down. But,
perhaps next time if you get a chance, even if you only bring half of it next time, and don't fully put it up.
Maybe try and get to Stowley next year.
Anyway, so excellently presented models. Well done. Right, we've got another Science Museum. It's on exhibit for quite a while. This one here came about as a result of a little gift I had. I thought that's rather nice. I might just make one of those in the car now. So there it is. The first thing you draw when you're making like that is the plan form. Once you've got that key strip all the way around, the crown strip there goes all the way and the back. That's a pretty good starting point. Stiffen it up with a few cross members. Then you have to get your little bit of cardboard template to get the shape of the formers over here. And once you've got those, the rest just flows on.
Oh yeah.
So that's the model one. Now on the prototype, those who use it will remember that the body's all aluminium, 28 feet long aluminium shell, 8 feet wide, hinged at the back end, so you could lift it up to expose a chassis. Well, I haven't got a chassis on mine. The body was quite heavy enough without a chassis. I've just got a skeletal chassis, which I'll show you in a minute. Under the skin, 2 Napier aero engines, mounted sort of side, not exactly side by side, one fore, one aft, and twisted a bit, so the prop shafts end up in the right, in the middle of the diffs or whatever. Anyway, I think it's, might with a bit of luck, get some. I'm afraid only half of you are going to have to start twisting it. So underneath we have 2 dummy Napier engines. Should be 2 3-speed gearboxes in there. Shaft drive, one engine drives the front axle, the other the rear. no connection between the two engines, and the engines themselves, you'll notice no radiators, they're actually cooled by blocks of ice in a big tank. The wheels, well, 6-inch pulleys on mine, 3'6" on the real one, 1:7, 1/7 full size this is. I think they do about 2,800 revs when they're really approaching the 400 mile an hour mark. So that's, because they go so fast, the treads on the tyres are very, very thin. The, what would you call it, the casing of the tyre has only got about 1 millimetre of rubber on it. So the centrifugal force doesn't throw the treads off. So what I'll do now, I'll try and turn him upside down and give him a little run for you. Here. Okay. So 1, 2, another one somewhere. Yes, that's better. The engines, I did say have a 3-speed gearbox. So if you use your imagination here, that is the first gear. That's about that's good for 125 first gear. Then clonk clonk into second. You're looking at about 250 in second. And then flat out of course for your 400. Just hope the UJs don't. They're cutting on a bit. That one here, it didn't quite make 400, 394 was the best he could manage, 6 miles an hour short. You probably wonder why he didn't try again and get the last 6 miles an hour, but doubtless he would have done. But the day after he got the 394, the rains came and washed the course away. So he never had a chance to push it to the magic 400. So that's Mr. Cobb. There's a photograph I was in my back garden. 400 miles an hour across the back garden. Straight through next to his greenhouse. And that's the Railton, okay? I'll just knock him off at the plug if I may. Saw a gentleman riding one of these along the Coventry Road earlier this year. No, it wasn't Ken. And had a good look at it. I said to him, well, I like your tricycle. Where'd you get one of those? He said, Cornwall, mate, Falmouth. Just round the corner. And I asked him how much it was. He said £2,500. I thought, well, that's the end of that then. So I went home and built one out of my Meccano set. So, starting with the, what would you call that, the chassis, the main beam. Looks like something that escaped from a block setter, doesn't it? So I settled on 5.5 inch square. I don't know why it was 5.5 inches, but it seemed a good dimension. Same with the front axle, or the front axle beam, 5.5 inch square. Wheels, well, they've got to be pretty strong because I was planning on sitting on this. So I thought we'd better put a few decent angle girders in the spokes. Now I had visions of the wheels doing that when I sat on it. So I've transferred the axle right through the king post. Is that kingpin? Out to here, and it has a wheel on the inside, so it sort of counteracts any tendency to collapse. That's the sort of steering mechanism, pretty basic. So we've got a frame, we've got some wheels, we've got some steering, and we've got a transmission. We have transmission. I've explained to one or two people that the rear sprocket was no problem, the chain meshed with the teeth straight off, no trouble. The front one was a bit more difficult. I could only get it to mesh with every other tooth. So the ones in between have to be built up with these yellow plates so that the chain, which is too long really, goes over the yellow and takes up the slack. It just about gets you. Anyway, I'll now demonstrate that it will stand my weight, but that's about it. Could anyone advise me with a lift? Yeah. This is a problem. I can get my trousers in the gym. Are you ready for this? It's going to be a horrible cracking sound. Yeah. There you are.
Walk forward. Walk forward.
Now the pedals, the trouble is these spindles are nowhere near strong enough to withstand the pressure you need to make it go. I could have perhaps beaten up, but I...
Push. Give him a push.
All right, then. A little tiny push. I'm coming down. Right. Ready. Ready. Right.
Red flag.
How much would you estimate, as a rough guess, that those parts would cost to put into a box and sell as a set to build a block sitting frame? Just as a...
What I bought, you know those little boxes you can buy?
Yeah.
I bought a whole set of them, and I put them together to make that.
Normally, you get silly things, you end up with, like, you spent 500 quid to build a small model. But I would imagine to build a lot, probably 25 quid or something like that, to buy those pieces, I think.
There are 3 still standing in Newcastle that I took a composite photograph of. The piece they wanted me to make it was a Rob Rich 5.5-inch ring gear. I had that in my hand and I thought this will make this kind of thing. As you see all the parts, it's not really complete. There's proper colours or anything. So, that's because of the size. It's the most complicated machine I've ever built. This. The split the total weight of it. Gone down into the thing. The wiring, I think it's safe. You were getting a red light, so you know about that. I can't have it on the table at home because the ceiling is not fine. I've had to build it on the floor. I'd like to show you inside here because I think this is the kind of novel idea. The switches. It's just like a rocker. It's just like a spring. It's just an isolation. It just drops on it. It seems quite safe. So I built it in wood. But I didn't want any contamination of the electricity. Safe. Okay. It's not quite finished. It's still got this to go on. I'm going to take it all apart and then have it. We'll paint all the coffee colours green again. So I'll bring it back.
Thank you very much for bringing it.
The Swedish railway. One of the things I was rather intrigued by had the control, the winding gears on the boom, and I thought it's a funny place to put it because it increases the weight. But I'm informed by Tony Brown today that the idea of putting as much weight as possible on the boom is to keep this arm into the down as much as possible, so when they're being pulled up, it keeps this in the soil or the stone and all that. But one of the things was the operator of this mechanism was in a little cage on the right wrong side of the mechanism itself. And you can imagine if it was cold Swedish winter, you could have got quite cold there, and also you'd have all the clanking machinery right by the side of it. One of the things I wondered is how does it get under bridges? And Tony once again informed me that they probably dismantled this and put it on a flatbed and moved it about that way. I tried to get the swivel mechanism in, but it fell off the point today. And the controls from that were inside. And it did also have a small chain mechanism for just moving it backwards and forwards on the track, which I haven't bothered to bring to feet. One of the problems was I wasn't certain how the boiler worked, but once again, Tony informed me that in actual fact, I got the boiler back to front. The firebox would have been at this end, and the chimney would have been at that end, that have been swinging doors here with coal bunkers inside there. But the idea of enclosing it here was to keep it away from the elements, to keep it insulated as much as possible. And that's about it, really.
You were saying you'd found a use for hinge plates
Yes, yes. And also I found a use for the little...
and the girder frame.
as well. Lots of simple, easy model to make quickly.
Do you know if it was used to shift snow as well?
I wouldn't have thought so, but it could have been possibly, I suppose. I thought it'd been a bit slow for snow.
Because it would have had the speed of the train to...
Yeah.
Well done, Jeffrey. You know the original number 10 Meccano, yeah, the layout that goes to sit down now,
This is the hard end.
it's about 7 years.
Thank you.
A favourite thing on Sunday afternoon when it was nice, we would take our two sons out to Whitley Bay, give them 2 bob each, and they'd go into the amusements and we'd go and sit on a floor in the sun and sit, have a cigarette and whatever. And of course we could go in and get 24 pennies and they were away. And then we went possible. We never thought we'd go on a couple of bob each like we did last week. And in 5 minutes they were back. Well, we only got 10 pennies, Dad. It's beginning 24.
I'll have another go.
Only 150% increase, it wasn't bad. Well done,
Actually, that was cheeky. I haven't mastered, even I haven't mastered picking something up in the time that you're So I'll have it. Oh, very good.
That's an idea, isn't it? Place like that. You see tiny dogs?
They get more advanced each year. Different
Another go and do it.
Whether it was one of these that's due to be written up anyway, a lot of Boeing yeah, so whether it was too late in the day to do anything but scrap it. But a heron, eh? Bang. Pretty big, aren't they?
Some big bird, you don't want to have him up this way.
Okay, gradually falls them.
Turn it down, please, and you'll see
It's now, it's really just the accountants or whatever. Just Right.